I certainly support and acknowledge all the comments that have been made. I'd like to approach this from more of a political direction, since I'm not in a humanitarian organization, nor am I an international lawyer. Uh, and in a sense, as tragic as it is, the engineered starvation in Gaza that we all acknowledge. It's not a humanitarian crisis or a disaster. It's a man-made famine. It's an engineered mechanism of pacifying the Palestinian people. Um, this is all a political matter. And although we have mechanisms like international law and so on, I mean they're not very effective because in the end the sanctions are only applied through political means, mainly the United Nations, or governments that sanction Israel or other countries. And that, of course, is all dependent upon politics. And Israel is very strong in terms of what I call its security politics. Its ability to, I wrote about this in War Against the People, its ability to parley its military prowess and also its technologies of repression internally that in fact it learns on the Palestinians. If you look at Gaza in a sense as a part of the laboratory in which Israel is developing tactics, and I think we have to look at this in that sort of a way, tactics and policies and weaponry and systems of surveillance and repression for political aims, this is really what it exports, including the idea of a security state. So not only is this a crime being committed in Gaza, specifically that we're talking about, I would argue that this is a part of in a sense, a plan or a sort of a tactical plan of repression that Israel is actually importing to other countries. Not that it's going to encourage other countries to starve populations that it wants to starve, but that in fact there is a logic and there's a system and there's an idea of repression, including the narrative that's very strong that someone mentioned, that justifies it in terms of terrorism, uh, uh, and criminalization and so on. So I think we have to look at this in a political way, but also look at this as a model that could be actually, in other words, instead of being condemned and ended here in Gaza in the Palestinian context, could actually be a model that's exported, and it might be an engineered starvation that's a part of a pacification and displacement process that we're going to see in other countries. I think we have to be aware of that. And we always talk about Zionism as settler colonialism, and we use that as kind of a mantra, but that really means something. And just as I think Chris said, Lemkin's idea of genocide was it's a continuation. So it isn't a one-off sort of a thing. So is settler colonialism, and all of this could have been predicted. Settler colonialism has a logic, it has a structure, it has a process, and policies again that I think Israel is developing on the Palestinians and then exporting to other places. And uh, and in particular, I think this is a part of a pacification process that's built into the settler colonial project. In other words, settler colonialism, a genocide is built into settler colonialism because the whole idea is to replace one people with another, to transform Palestine into Israel, to Judaize. A lot of the terminology that's most important for understanding this, and even for mobilizing public opinion, isn't included in the legal language. We talk about genocide, we talk about apartheid, we talk about occupation. Those are very important terms that have legal references. But a term like Judaization or even pacification, um, uh, and settler colonialism. These are terms that really grab the essence, the logic of what Israel is doing. You begin to understand why Israel is doing it, but they don't have legal references. And so we tend sometimes not to use them. But you can't Judaize a country, uh, without genocide. And so, so, and so, And so on the one hand, I think what we have to do, I mean, I'm really in a political way trying to relate to the question of how do we fight this? I don't know if in the immediate arena, of course, where there's no time to organize or anything else, build campaigns, we have to end the starvation immediately. But from the point of view of this policy of starvation and of settler colonialism, I think we have to get this analysis through. I don't think it's enough simply to appeal to international law and to say, the ICG has done this, the ICC has done this. There are human rights conventions in the UN, Francesca's wonderful work in the UN, and so on. Those are references that have a meaning, they're pertinent, but but over time, I mean, you have to deal with these issues over time and build a public consciousness. And there, I think groups maybe that are more political should be dealing more with analysis so people understand why this is happening, the logic of it all, and we can anticipate this. And then at the same time, I think what we're lacking are those organizations that can then mobilize in order um, to oppose what we see as coming down the line or what's happening, like engineered starvation or like pacification. Um, and here we're really lacking. I mean, there's dozens of organizations abroad that are doing excellent work. I mean, there's mobilizations all over the world. Certainly, this is becoming a public issue. It's getting into the media. Governments are dealing with the starvation issue and Gaza, of course. But again, we're lacking that ability to in an organized, effective way to oppose these policies. And one of the things I would suggest that we're missing is what there used to be. Some of you probably remember this, an international a coordinating committee on Palestine. Uh, there used to be this, 40 or 50 years ago, even. Uh, in other words, we're missing a coordinating body that can put together the people that are dealing with international law that the activists don't know about very well, and the activist community that has this ability to mobilize, and let's say academics or people that understand settler colonialism that can provide that analysis. And so if we can put those things together, the activism, the analysis, mobilizing the instruments we have, then we have a chance to more effectively mount campaigns, even in the short term, to fight and end issues like this engineered starvation that's happening in Gaza. And so what I would say is, this isn't an answer for ending this immediately, but certainly we have to try to more coordinate our organizations. I would suggest, and some of you could be involved with this because you've been involved with this, organizing an international coordinating committee on Palestine that is able to bring groups from all over the world together. And I think there's a disconnect between what's happening in the world and the Palestinians here as well. Palestinians here often aren't brought into those international networks. And so an international coordinating committee on Palestine could bridge that gap between international organizing and the Palestinian input that's really important. This doesn't relate specifically. I think all of you have really talked in detail about what's happening, the actual starvation and so on. What I'm trying to say is I think we're all, and like Chris mentioned the word, I think Chris, powerlessness. I think we're all feeling powerlessness. The tools are there, the instruments are there, the international laws are there, and so on. But we're not able to really effectively end this campaign of engineered starvation. And I think we have to begin to address that in some way.